All right, it's confession time. You didn't know we did confession in the Methodist Church, right? We do. It's important for us to confess. And I need to confess to you something. I'm getting more annoyed with people today than ever before. Does that ring true for you as well? Have you found yourself just at a fever pitch with every little thing that someone does or someone says? Are people getting under your skin more easily than ever before? They are for me. They are for me. And it's just so frustrating, isn't it? It's so frustrating. One of the smallest things that just really irks me, and if you do this, forgive me, but I've got to vent for a little bit, okay? It's the people at the grocery store who don't follow the signs in the aisles, right? Oh, wow, we've got a few people who that frustrates as well. So I'm just like, every time I see it, I'm just like, okay, that says not this way, and that says this way. So go this way and not that way, right? It's in my mind, it's just so simple. I know that can of soup that you want is just around the corner, but take an extra 60 seconds and go the other way, right? I know that you're wearing a mask and you really don't want to, and the last thing you want to do is follow another rule. I know that you're cooking a meal for the 100 millionth time in 3 weeks because you can't go out to eat. I get all that. I do. But just follow the sign. But then I catch myself, even in this moment, thinking, Kelly, they're only stickers on the floor. Should you really be making such a big deal over that? But then the next breath I do, right? The next turn I see somebody coming the way that according to the stickers, they shouldn't. What gets under your skin? What annoys you? Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a child. Maybe it's a neighbor that you're seeing way too much of these days because they're home just as much as you are. Maybe it's somebody you're sitting with right now. Maybe it's your pastor who does or says the same thing every single Sunday and you just want them to quit, right? But there are so many things that can so easily frustrate us these days. And not only frustrate us, but it gets us to the point where we're actually acting out. We're not just annoyed on the inside, but we're so quick to take it out on other people as well. Many of us have probably seen the viral videos on social media, and some have made the news even of individuals in grocery store checkout lines or parking lots where they've just completely lost their cool. They've followed one too many rules, or they've let one too many people annoy them, and they just lost it. And they lash out at people either verbally or even physically. And we may not do that in here or at home, but how often do we do it within our own hearts? How often do we lash out at people just so frustrated, so overwhelmed? We did this the first week, but I want to do it even more this week. I want you to take your sticks out. Those of you at home, grab all of your sticks. And I just want you to wail away on them, okay? There's no beat, no rhythm. I just want us to get a sense of what it sounds like to live in the world that we live in today. Ready? Just go at it. Just go at it. Just keep going. Keep going. It's loud. It's obnoxious. And we get to the point where we just can't take it anymore, right? Who else feels like that's what 2020 has been like for you? That sound made real in our lives. But guess what, church? Here's what dawned on me this week as I was preparing for this message. That sound that would just drive us crazy if we had to listen to it 24/7, you each contributed to it. Didn't you? That sound that was so annoying, you were part of it. I was part of it. At home, you were part of it. So maybe our level of annoyance at work, at home, at school, at church, maybe it's not always only the other person's fault. Maybe there's some work that I have to do within me when I see somebody go in the wrong direction at the grocery store. Maybe it's not entirely their fault. Maybe God needs to do a new groove in me so that I can stop being so annoyed at them. some of the first people that we're ever annoyed with are our siblings. If that was your first memory of being annoyed with somebody, was a brother or a sister, raise your hand. It was me. I've got an older brother and a younger sister. My older brother was the first person in my life to annoy me because he wouldn't let me jump on the trampoline with him. I love you, Patrick, but you wouldn't let me jump on the trampoline with you. My little sister was annoying, well, just because she's my little sister. And that's what little sisters are supposed to be, right? I love you too, Caitlin. But they're some of the first people in our lives to ever annoy us and get under our skin. And we see this play out in Scripture as well. We get a story of sibling annoyance in Luke chapter 10. We get this wonderful, wonderful, beautiful story about two sisters who encounter Christ and react to him in two completely different ways. Now, they're not young siblings. They're into adulthood by the time we meet Mary and Martha in Luke chapter 10. But they're still siblings. They're living together in their own home. We don't know what other family members might be living with them, but we know for sure that Mary and Martha are there, according to the Gospel of Luke. And I imagine Mary somewhere in the house and Martha out on her stoop sweeping, or maybe just resting, chatting with the neighbors, and she hears a commotion come around the corner of her dusty first century Palestinian village, and lo and behold, it's Jesus Christ. This man that maybe she's heard of his teachings before, maybe she's only heard rumors, but she sees him and she knows who he is. And it's not just Christ, because Jesus never really traveled alone. He at least had his 12 apostles with him, but more often than that, he had at least several dozen, if not 100 or 200 people with him who were his regular followers that would travel with him from village to village to village. So there's no telling how many people came around that corner, but it would have been a crowd. It would have been a group of people who followed Jesus wherever he went, which makes Martha's next actions so much more impressive. What does she do for Jesus? She welcomes him. That's what we're told. She welcomes him into her home. And by welcoming Jesus, she's also welcoming his followers. She's also welcoming his group, his closest apostles, and those that came with them. So this wasn't just Mary sitting down with, or Martha sitting down with Jesus for a half an hour over coffee. That's not the sort of hospitality or welcome we're talking about here. We're talking about a huge undertaking that Martha would need a lot of help with. Because she would not just need to feed Jesus, but she would need to feed his followers. She would not just need to house Jesus, but to house his followers as well. When Shannon and I were in ministry overseas, we were serving in a culture very similar to the one that Mary and Martha would have been living in 2,000 years ago. A Middle Eastern culture, a Mediterranean culture that elevates hospitality to the highest degree. It's one of the highest values in society. The culture that we were living in, there was this cultural rule that if you invited somebody into your house, you could not ask them to leave for 72 hours. It's true. Now, very few people took advantage of that rule, but the host knew that they could not ask someone to leave for a full 3 days. If you invite somebody into your home, the moment they step over that threshold, you should feed them, you should sleep them, you should provide them something to drink, you should do everything that you possibly can to make sure they feel welcomed. And it's only after 3 days would you be allowed to say, you know what, maybe it's time to go. Right? Now, I don't know if that cultural rule was in effect in Mary and Martha's village, but there would have been a similar expectation that Martha and Mary go above and beyond to provide excellent, radical, extravagant hospitality for Jesus. So they've been invited into their home, and Martha gets to work, right? Because she has a lot of work to do. She's in the kitchen, and a few minutes go by, and maybe half an hour goes by, maybe 45 minutes goes by, and she realizes she hasn't seen Mary do a dang thing. Well, maybe Mary's out in the storehouse gathering ingredients, so she goes out there. Nope, Mary's nowhere to be found. Well, maybe Mary is out with the animals, trying to help the men figure out which animal to slaughter for the day. Nope, Mary's not there either. So she goes to the last place. Surely Mary's not in the living area. Surely Mary's not acting like one of the guests. Surely Mary isn't sitting with Jesus, because she has a lot of work to do. But sure enough, Martha goes into the living area where Jesus and his followers are. And there she is. Not serving. Not offering hospitality. not doing the work that the rules say she should be doing. She's acting like a guest in her own home. She's sitting with Jesus. And you better believe that makes Martha's blood boil. Because Mary's not doing what she should be doing, right? I look at this story and I'm so easily aligned with Martha. Like, Martha, you're right. You and Mary both have a lot of work to do. And Mary's not doing it. Mary's not doing it. And Martha, she's so overwhelmed, she's so annoyed that she throws a fit. She really does. She does the first century equivalent of throwing a fit in the parking lot at Walmart, right? Caught on video. Because she has the boldness to go into the middle of the crowd in the living area, to go straight to Jesus himself and complain in front of her sister who's sitting right there. She says boldly and blatantly at the end of verse 40, she says, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Talk about a rant. That was above and beyond 2,000 years ago. That was intentionally trying to shame her sister then and there to do what Martha did. And my mind says Martha's right. Think of the most recent time you've been annoyed by somebody. Maybe it was today. Maybe it was yesterday. Maybe it was earlier this week. But what annoyed you this week? And remember the feeling of how right you were in your annoyance. Because you knew that person did something they shouldn't be doing. That you knew that they should have done it differently. Because you were right and they were wrong. How annoyed were you? Well, Luke has an inside track as to what was going on in Martha's heart. And Luke is trying to get across to us that maybe, just maybe, Martha's problem here isn't really the fact that Mary was sitting with Jesus doing nothing. Maybe Martha's annoyance had more to do with herself, than it did any actions on Mary's part. And we get a hint of this. Just a verse earlier, when we're first told that Mary was sitting with Jesus, Luke gives us an inside track as to what's going on in Martha's heart. In verse 39, we hear that Martha had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. It hit me like a ton of bricks 2 weeks ago when I first started really diving into this passage in preparation for the sermon. That perhaps my annoyance as that person going the wrong way down the grocery aisle actually has nothing to do with them, but has everything to do with my distracted mind, my distracted eyes, my distracted soul, my distracted heart, my distracted life. All these distractions that 2020 has thrown in our direction, even in the mundaneness and the boringness of stay-at-home orders and quarantines, we're more distracted than ever. And it's put blinders over our eyes to see the presence of Christ right before us. Martha was distracted, but she wasn't just distracted. Jesus goes even further in response to Martha's rant. They should have had two different names. Mary and Martha are really hard to say together. A different name that didn't start with M. Excuse me for getting these characters mixed up. But Martha ranted, and Jesus sees straight through her and says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. So he adds that label of worry to distraction. And the Greek word that Jesus uses there many times isn't even translated as distraction. It's translated as troubled. Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled by many things. So often this scripture passage is just used to tell people, don't be so busy. But Jesus isn't talking about busyness. Jesus is talking about the things that worry us, the things that trouble us. The things that distract us from seeing who he is when he's standing right in front of us. What if that person that's going the wrong way at the grocery aisle, what if that person is the closest I'll ever get to Jesus that day? And I just blew them off. because my worries and my troubles and my distractions just got in the way of me being able to see the Christ that is in them. So yes, you may be annoyed in your life these days. You may be distracted and worried and troubled by many things. But who is that keeping you from truly seeing in your life? Back when I was pastoring up in Minnesota, we were living in a town that had a high Muslim refugee population. And fall a few years ago, if you remember right, there was a massive terrorist attack in the city of Paris, organized by a group of radical Muslim terrorist cells. It was a very, for lack of a better word, successful terrorist attack. Many, many, many lives were lost. You remember this. And you better believe that raised the fear in our town that we were living in. When people would go around and they would see people who didn't look like them. When they would see people wearing headscarves, talking differently, looking differently, dressing differently, worshiping differently. And the level of worry, the level of trouble, the level of distraction in our town and in the congregation I was ministering in definitely rose. And we were getting annoyed with them. So I would get asked a lot, Kelly, the language that was actually used with me by one person, Kelly, how do we deal with these people? That's what I was asked. So I told them this. I said, you know what, next time you're at the grocery store, instead of avoiding the checkout line that has the Somali woman, actually stand in her line. Stand in her line, and when you get up to the checkout counter and she looks you in the face and she asks the company question, how was your visit? How was your day? Look at her in the eyes and ask her the same thing. Because you may be the only person to do that day. You may be the only Christian to show them the love of Christ that day. So instead of being annoyed with them or troubled by them or worried by them, go and be Jesus to them. And watch your worries, watch your troubles, watch your distractions drift away because of the healing work that Christ is doing in your heart as you love another. And I'm preaching to myself here today because the next time I get annoyed by this person for doing that or that person for doing this, I've got to learn to look them in the face and see that is a person created by God too. That the image of God rests in that person too. Because you see, church, when the actions of others get under your skin, look them in the face and see the love that God has for them. When the actions of others get under your skin, look them in the face and see what love God has for them. So I'm going to love the people who go the wrong way at the grocery aisle. I am. I'm going to love the people who I disagree with. I'm going to love the people who drive too slow down White Sands. I'm going to love them. I'm going to love them. Are you going to love your family this week when they drive you crazy? Because they will. The things your kids did this morning, they're going to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to love my wife, even though she's not perfect. She's not perfect today and she won't be perfect tomorrow. I'm going to ask that she does the same with me. I'm going to love my coworkers. Y'all aren't perfect, are you, Holly? No. But we're going to love each other. Will you love this week? Will you love your colleagues? Will you love your family? Will you love your neighbors? They are going to drive you insane. I can guarantee you that. But this world needs less and less of the banging on the sticks. And they need us, the church, to put our sticks down. For us to realize we're contributing so much to the noise. Just like Michael and Madison said, as we practice those regular rhythms of love, those regular rhythms of grace, we're going to experience so much peace in our life. Remember that line at the end of our groove prayer? Victorious if in you we move, every step, God, be my groove. I want to be victorious. And that's your challenge this week. Seek the victory of Christ. Seek putting down your sticks. Seek being not a contributor to the noise, but someone who actually lessens it. And every person who annoys you, every person who drives you crazy, every person who gets under your skin, look at them. See the love God has for them. And may you be blessed.